So after playing quite a bit of Diablo 4, there's a few things I learned that would have been helpful to know beforehand. So today I'm going to share 10 of those things which I consider important to know before you play so that you can be ready when the game releases in June. All right, so number 1, Incense. Incense at the Alchemist. This will give you a wide range of buffs. You can only have one incense on at a time. It functions very similar to elixirs. However, you get an increased bonus depending on how many other players are near you when you use that incense, right? So you're gonna have an incense party, right? Everyone groups up, uses their incense. For example, let's look at the Chorus of War incense. This increases all stats by 40 and crit and overpower damage by 5% for every nearby player and lasts 20 minutes. You know, this sounds like it's meant to encourage players to group up and get a massive incense bonus by being around other players or being in a group and then refresh the incense on the go. I imagine most players probably won't always have other people to play with, so I imagine players will be grouping near vendors or main town waypoints to refresh their incense, since that will have the most players gathered in one spot, I believe. And there are a lot of strong incense buffs available, so make sure you always have one on as often as you can, just like an elixir. I'll put a link to a list of all the elixirs in the description so you can check those out. Okay, moving on to number 2. Always have an unstoppable or immune skill on your bar. Unstoppable and immune remove all crowd control abilities such as fear, stun, slows, and even tether. Tether is a new ailment that can happen in Diablo 4. It basically makes it so you can't like run away from the person who you're tethered to, right? You can also use something that makes you unstoppable in order to escape from crowd control. So it doesn't just make you immune, you can use it while you're being crowd controlled. Now this is really important for boss fights where, for example, the Blood Bishop might have grabbed you. You can actually use Trample, for example, to escape the stun effect, which will make you unstoppable. Rogues have Shadow Step, which is the same thing. Sorcerers have Teleport. Blood Mist makes the Necromancer immune, which functions like unstoppable, but you also can't take damage, so it's even better. Necro OP. And then Charge or Rallying Cry can make the Barbarian unstoppable. So every class has at least one ability to free themselves of crowd control, and they should have that one ability on their bars at all times so that you're ready to go to use it when you start getting crowd controlled by a boss or other dangerous monster. It's going to really help you stay alive because you can't use potions when you're crowd controlled either. So, you know, this could potentially save your life in many situations. Okay, let's move on to tip number 3. Shrines and healing wells in dungeons have a chance to be cursed. You can tell if a shrine is cursed beforehand, before you click it, which activates the curse, by viewing the minimap. If the icon is missing, the shrine is cursed. So as you know, when you look on the minimap, you can see, oh, it's a healing well or it's a shrine. If you look there and there's nothing, that means it's cursed. Now, of course, you know, you do want to click it anyways, but it's good to know that beforehand so you're not surprised. A cursed shrine or cursed well will start spawning monsters, which you then have to defeat before you can access the shrine or the well. And of course, shrines are always worth grabbing because of the fantastic powers you can get. Pretty much every single one will make you either deal more damage or benefit you in some way, like Artillery Shrine. It's going to make you clear so much faster. Blasting Wave Shrine increases your speed modestly. Conduit increases it greatly because you can teleport around dealing damage. Some of them aren't as great, like Protection Shrine. It gives you unstoppable and invulnerable, which is kind of nice, but doesn't necessarily speed up your clearing speed. But they're always worth grabbing. They're fantastic. Okay, let's move on to tip number 4. You can refine resources at the Alchemist to create crafting materials from other crafting materials. Now this is useful if you have way too much of one material and you want to convert some of it to another material you need. These materials are used for upgrading your gear. Now, for example, one really great use is like you have all these beginner like ores. You can actually turn some of them into silver, which is a sort of higher level ore. And so this is just one example of, you know, you have way too much of the early resource, so you want to turn it into something else. You can do this at the Alchemist, refining resources. So it's very helpful to get the resources you might be missing by filling in those gaps so you can continue to upgrade your gear. All right, tip number 5. Opals are actually shared across characters. That means you can max out your opals and make a fresh character and then gear them out really, really fast. Or if you have a low level character, you can farm opals on them and then spend them on a high level character. So you're kind of like basically getting those opals easily and then getting really good gear with it on your other high level character, right? Opals are actually really important in Diablo 4, which brings us to tip number 6. When searching for specific legendary aspects, the fastest way to find what you're looking for is actually gambling with opals. Now, if you look here, I've listed out the prices at the Purveyor of Curiosities, which is the gambler in Diablo 4. You know, offhands, weapons, those are the most expensive. And then you can see gloves and boots are the cheapest, along with the Whispering Key. That doesn't give you gear, that just opens silent chests. So these are the prices, right? And then these are the different legendary aspect categories. So you can see that certain aspects can go only into certain item slots. Amulets being the most flexible, they can contain any type of legendary aspect, right? And so using these two pieces of information, you can figure out the cheapest obol cost and the highest aspect category chance based off of that. Now, it's not guaranteed when you purchase an item from the Purveyor of Curiosities that's going to be legendary. However, you want to focus on the cheapest cost item so that you can buy the most of them to increase your chances of that being a legendary item by purchasing more frequently, right? And so you want to choose the cheapest cost item that also has the highest chance to be the type of aspect you're looking for. And so I've basically looked at the chances, the probabilities, and these are the best item slots to gamble for specific legendary aspects listed on your screen here. If you're going for an offensive aspect, the best item to spam purchase are gloves, because gloves can only be offensive or utility, and they cost only 25 obols compared to something like a weapon. And again, not guaranteed it's going to be a legendary, so you have to buy frequently. You have to buy a lot of them. So cheapness is very important. If you want a defensive aspect, your best bet is pants, because believe it or not, that item slot of pants can only hold a defensive aspect. They actually cannot hold any other type of aspect. So if you know that you want a unique in that slot, then fine. Don't do this, because uniques can't even be found from gambling. But if you know you want a defensive aspect, 100% always put it in your pants. Utility goes to boots or gloves because it has an equal chance. They're both equally cheap. And you can see here that they both have a 50-50 for either being either mobility for boots or utility. And then it's also offensive or utility for gloves. So it's perfectly equal. Either of the two will work when you're looking for a utility aspect. When it comes to a resource, 100% ring is your best bet because amulet's way too expensive. Helmet can be so many other things. It could be utility, it could be defensive, but the ring can only be offensive other than a resource, and it's also cheaper than an amulet. And then finally, mobility, boots. Always boots, because boots, it's either boots or amulet. Boots are cheaper. Amulet can be anything. So 100% if you're going for something for a mobility aspect, get the boots. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I really think that it's very important to know your different odds, because you're going to basically be grinding obols as you go through the game, and you're going to use them because events grant obols. Clearing like if you do events around the world, you get obols. I believe clearing cellars, even clearing dungeons, you get obols a lot just by playing the game. Once you hit max obols, go to the Purveyor of Curiosities and use this knowledge to get the legendary aspect you're looking for that you know is really good for your build. Now, if you learned something new or are enjoying the videos so far, leave a like down below, as it really helps me out on YouTube. Thank you very much. And while you're down there, consider subscribing if you're new here. I've got lots more Diablo 4 videos just like this coming your way as fast as I can make them. It would be great to have you along for the ride. All right, let's move on to tip number 7. Because of limited item slots and legendary aspect item slot restrictions, it's usually going to be in your best interest to put your mobility aspect on your boots. The alternative is in an amulet, and amulets grant 50% value on aspects. And you probably don't want to waste 50% extra value on a legendary aspect on what could be one of your build-defining offensive aspects, for instead a 15% increase on a mobility aspect. So I would say almost always put your mobility aspect in your boots, and then the same thing applies for pants. The pants item slot's the only item slot that can hold a defensive aspect. So if you're planning on getting a defensive aspect, always put it into the pants slot unless you know a unique is better for that item slot. So those two for sure are going to be the best way to gear your character. All right, let's move on to tip number 8. One of the fastest ways to level is by doing world events and quests, but you can also stumble upon someone else doing an event even if it's about to be completed, and you'll still get the full bonus XP from this. Now, because of this, there are ways to speed up your leveling by seeking out events and using a town portal after you complete an event to reset the event and maybe even teleport back to someone else's event that's already in progress. Now, this trick worked in the open beta where you could finish an event, teleport to town, and then come back and the event was reset, allowing you to continuously get that bonus XP over and over and those obols so you can go gamble more. So if you want to power level, this could be one method which takes advantage of the new shared world of Diablo 4. Moving on to tip number 9. Sticking with the theme of a shared world, you can also just AFK at events and they will eventually reset. Players did this at Osgar Reed, which is that level 35 boss on the west end of Fractured Peaks, who drops really good loot. If you AFK there, you'll probably eventually die, but a player will likely resurrect you, and once resurrected, you're actually invulnerable until you move. But since you're AFK, you're going to be permanently invulnerable, and depending on how long you're gone for, when you come back, you can just collect all those items that dropped. And I noticed there was no disconnect feature in the Diablo 4 beta. You could literally just AFK all day. But considering this, somewhat exploitative trick, I would say maybe the developers will add one in the future for the final release so that players aren't just literally always logged into Diablo 4 collecting, events being completed by other players. All right, final tip, number 10. Unlike in Diablo 2, gems can be unsocketed. So don't be afraid to put gems into your gear for bonuses. Gems can be unsocketed at the jeweler, which can also add sockets to gear, upgrade gems similar to how the Roderick Cube could combine gems, and very similar to how the jeweler operated in Diablo 3. If you enjoyed these tips, I've made a complete list of 17 things I wish I knew before playing Diablo 4 for you in this video on your screen now. So give that a click so you can get even more out of this awesome game, and I'll see you there in just a second.